Cheese. All right, and welcome back to That's Some Cheese, part of the Vendetta Sports Podcast Network. Today is Wednesday, March 23rd, 2022, and today we're going to be talking about some hockey. It's been a while since we did an episode, but Andrew McGuinness is back. Andrew, what's going on? How are you?
Not much, Trey. Happy we're on the other side of the deadline now. Just gearing up for the stretch run for just about everyone. Only 1 month until this very long regular season comes to an end. So looking forward to some playoff hockey coming up. Not too long.
Yeah. Well, we may not be post-deadline because apparently Evgeny Dadonov, he's coming back. Or is he?
Well, he is back. It's officially been voided.
Oh,
and I don't think I've ever seen that happen before in any sport.
Like who's to blame here for that trade, by the way?
I mean, if Ottawa didn't tell Vegas about the no move clause, then they get some blame, but it's mostly Vegas, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're the ones who put themselves in this cap situation. I mean, Dadonov's no trade clause was on all the big salary cap websites like Cap Friendly and Puckpedia. Like, I knew he had a no trade clause. It's not my. It's
Vegas. Should have never traded for him to begin with.
Exactly. That trade made no sense. They just traded Fleury, and they spent the money they saved on Fleury on Dadonov and Laurent Brossoit, which is just not a good way of spending $7 million, especially considering the bad will that they got for trading their franchise goalie.
Don't forget about Nolan Patrick. He was, in that mix there.
So, yeah, I mean, that was a trade. That was with Cody Glass. Yeah. I was more with them not developing Cody Glass properly or just thinking about to draft him. Pick your poison.
Yeah. Do you think Vegas is even going to make the playoffs? I would almost go no at this point.
It's not looking great, which is they may have honestly at the beginning of the season they may have been my safest playoff pick, and now looking at their odds on MoneyPuck.com, their playoff odds are 37.3%.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's really bad, in fact. And now that Dadonov comes back, they can't activate Stone right now. If that was the plan, trade Dadonov and then be able to activate Stone. So they can still trade Dadonov. So this is an important thing. We call it the trade deadline because that's basically what it is. But there's no rule that says you can't make trades after March 21st. The only thing is that if, say, Dadonov is traded to the Florida Panthers, say hypothetically, he would not be eligible to play in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So obviously that's why you basically never see trades after the trade deadline because there's almost no point. So basically the only team that would want to take on Dadonov right now and probably even have the space to take him on would be a team who's way out of the playoff picture, who A, might not want a veteran like that, but B, Vegas has absolutely no leverage in this trade. And they already were showed their hand. They were willing to give up a second-round pick to get rid of the contract. It's probably going to take at least a first now, you would think.
Oh, boy.
It's a really bad spot.
I think they're done for this year. They're too banged up at this point.
Yeah, I mean, looking at their injury list, it is not pretty.
And especially yesterday, they outshot the Wild by I think 20, no, not the Wild. They outshot the Winnipeg Jets by like 20 and got shut out. It wasn't close. I just don't think they can hang on without Leonard in that either.
Yeah, Leonard honestly, you could argue is the most critical injury just because, you lose your starting goaltender.
They're getting bad goalie play
on a team like Vegas, you lose a first-line forward. Okay, you have like other first-line caliber forwards. They don't have a goaltender that's as good as Robin Leonard. I mean, they used to have one, and then they gave him away for free. So, future reference, if you have a really good goalie, don't give him away for free.
Yeah. Let's go to your team.
Don't let the team that acquired him turn around and flip him for a conditional second. That just makes it look even worse.
Yeah. Tough scenes. Speaking of tough things to watch, the Flyers. Like, what do you do to stay motivated the rest of the year? You have to watch them.
Barely. I mean, like, in theory, like you say, the motivation is to, like, see how the young players help, but they've only got a couple young players up right now. Honestly, the biggest motivation that you could probably find as a Flyers fan is, like, if you like a player like Ivan Provorov or Travis Konecny or Travis Sanheim, you might want to watch now because at least one of those guys probably is not a Flyer after this season. Because I mean,
boy,
Chuck Fletcher has talked about the aggressive retool, and they only have $5 million in cap space next season. So the only way they're going to be able to fill what Fletcher said is a lack of top end talent is by clearing cap space, and they can buy out James Van Riemsdyk or ship off his contract with a draft pick or a prospect attached to it, but that's only going to clear somewhere between like $3 and $7 million, depending on like how much they'd have to retain or whatnot. They're probably going to make another move, and it's probably going to be one of those three guys. So if you're a Flyers fan, you love either any of those players or even someone else on the team, like Scott Laughton. Maybe I don't think Laughton's getting traded because they value his leadership and he's a pretty good bottom of the lineup player. But there are going to be some moves made this offseason. So if you're a player you like on the Flyers, better watch them while you still can.
I feel for you. Every time you turn in one of those blog articles, I'm like, oh man, like the Red Sox, like I die for the Red Sox more than anybody. When they're really bad like that, like I can't watch 162 games.
But see, they're not like that though, because they're the Red Sox. Like you don't have to worry about this. Imagine. So I'm two of the three other guys in my quad are Boston sports fan. And I was like, we were talking about sports today. I looked this up. Since 2010, since my 9th birthday, October 29, 2010, how many Philly teams have made the semifinal in their sport?
Oh boy. Wow. I guess it's been a while for the Phillies because Amaro tanked them.
Well, they haven't even been to the postseason since. They have none. They have 0.
I guess just the Eagles then, right?
Yup. It's just the Eagles. The Flyers. That includes I think their Philly teams are 1-5. I want to say is the record in Game 7 / NFL playoff games, the chance to go to the conference final.
Man,
the Sixers have lost 3 Game 7s in the second round. The Flyers have lost 1, and the Eagles lost that game, the NFC divisional game, to the Saints the year after they won the Super Bowl. So 1-5.
At least you got Ristolainen to look forward to, though.
Would you like to hear a direct quote from Rasmus Ristolainen after last night's game?
I'd love to. This is fun. Oh, man. Okay, on a positive note, I do think Joel Farabee's going to be really good eventually.
Rasmus Ristolainen after last night's game. Direct quote. I gave them 3 goals, and it cost us the game. But it's okay because they were playing a super good team who is incredibly insane, and it's totally understandable. Oh, wait, they were in Detroit.
Yeah. At least they didn't pay him to keep him, Like they could have just moved on from the mistake. But
yeah, and not only could they have moved on from the mistake, they could have gotten draft capital and cap space to fill this high-end talent need. I haven't finished writing my article from last night's game yet just because I have a lot of schoolwork to do, so I'm probably going to do it after this is done. But the point I'm going to make and what the article is probably going to center around is that, the trade deadline is like supposed to be a time of hope, no matter if your team is good or bad. If you're a good team, obviously you're trying to gear up for a playoff push. But if you're a bad team, hey, you can trade some guys, you can get some picks and prospects or not, and you can feel comfortable in the fact that you are going to be closer to getting to fixing the issues with your team and returning to the playoffs, whether it's depth, whether
Anaheim
Ducks. Yeah, like the Anaheim Ducks got a ton of draft picks, and I feel for them because I think that Dadonov trade would have been really good for them.
Yeah,
some of his Dadonov's underlying numbers are pretty solid, and a second round pick is a second round pick. They have the cap space for it. It could have been like a Fleury situation where again I think that Anaheim probably would have been able to turn around and you keep him next year for the game if help him like a middle forward role, or you flip him and you retain salary for 1 year and you flip him to a contender and he's a depthless scorer for one of those teams. I actually got to feel for Anaheim because I think they low-key kind of got the short end of the stick because I really like that trade for them. But with the Flyers, they got 2024 first-round pick. They got Owen Tippett, who is a shoot first winger taken in the first round of the 2017 draft, who hasn't developed as quickly as expected. Who they've got playing alongside Morgan Frost, a pass first center from the 2017 first round of that year's draft, who hasn't developed as quickly as expected. And they got a couple mid-round picks. They are not that much closer at all to being able to address the issues with the team. Because, I mean, how much value does a 2024 first really have, especially on a team as good as Florida? You know, it's not like they got this pick from a bubble playoff team or a team like the Penguins, who are, you know, they have a very good core, but an older core that, you know, it's likely not likely because you just can't bet against Sid Crosby, but it's possible. Like, you can see how they could be bad in a couple of years and you could get a really good pick. Florida's probably going to be really, really good for a really, really long time to come. So the pick is probably going to be like no higher than like 23. So are you really that much closer to getting this high-end talent? Probably not.
Did they get much more than Montreal got for Sherratt?
I mean, I would probably got about the same, honestly.
Yeah.
The reason why they did not get much for Giroux is because he had no move clause, and he was only willing to go to Florida, so they had no leverage. Which I completely do not hold against Claude Giroux. He deserved the right to be able to pick where he wanted to go after just toiling away on a Flyers team that either wasn't trying to win or was just shooting themselves in the foot for basically his entire 9 3/4 seasons as captain.
Before we get to the Giroux thing, I do want to ask this question. I still can't quite understand why these teams go all in for these, you know, these tough defensemen. Like, what did the Panthers really have to give up a first round pick and more for Ben Sherratt?
Well, Sherratt isn't worth that, I would say, but I mean, someone else was going to give it up if they didn't give it up. The reason why teams do that, to answer your question, is because the playoffs are generally seen as more physical and fewer penalties are called. And so teams feel like they need that physical presence. And Florida did need another defenseman. Whether Sherratt was the right one or not, I would maybe quibble with. But that's why, because, you know, playoffs are much more physical. You know, I think it was either Barry Trotz or Alex Ovechkin when Trotz was coaching Washington, who were asked what the difference is between the playoffs and the regular season. And they said the difference was that everybody hits. So if you have a guy like Sherratt who's really physical, then you can maybe make the theory is that he'll make a bigger difference and he'll move the needle more in the playoffs than he would in the regular season.
Like for Dallas, though, based on the price that these defensemen are going, and you don't think you're going to re-sign Klingberg anyway, why wouldn't you trade him at the deadline?
Because, the reason Dallas, honestly, they kind of reminded me of the 2018-19 Blue Jackets team, just the kind of situation that they're in with the contracts of Ben and Sagan. You know, it looks like those guys are starting to decline. They're already probably not worth their cap hits, and, you know, that discrepancy is only going to grow over the next couple of years. So if Dallas thinks they have a chance to win a cup, like, their chances are only going to get
more. Do they?
I don't really think they do, but I mean, you get into the playoffs and anything is possible. But the point, like that Columbus team in 2018-19, they really weren't seen as, you know, that big of a threat to win the Stanley Cup, but they were about to lose Artemi Panarin and Sergei Bobrovsky. So this was really their last best chance, I think, to have a shot at winning the Stanley Cup. And so they're basically keeping Klingberg as an own rental because obviously they're a better team with him than without him. Although I would have said, honestly, if Dallas, if you're going to go down that road, they should have just done what Columbus did and traded for the best center on the market. Or best, like, whoever they could have gotten. I don't know what their cap situation is, but they should have probably been a little bit more aggressive if they were.
Yeah, to me, they didn't do anything, though, really. So
yeah, no, they got Vladislav Nemesnikov from Detroit.
How many times has he been passed around?
A decent amount. they probably remember him scoring against them in Game 7 in the bubble with Colorado. We're like, we don't want that to happen again, so we'll just get him on last time.
Okay, Claude Giroux. What are your thoughts on it? Like, are you sad internally? Like, you don't think he's coming back?
I'm sad externally.
Okay.
Like, there is no internalizing this. I mean, for someone my age and, you know, a lot of my friends who like hockey or even people who are a little bit older than me, Claude Giroux is the Philadelphia Flyers. Like, I became a fan a couple of years into his captaincy, and, you know, he's been the face of the franchise for my entire fandom. And it's been a pleasure to watch him play. And the only thing that I wish I could have done differently, as I wish I'd become a hockey fan a little bit earlier so I could have enjoyed some of the years where he was on a bigger stage in those Flyers teams early in his career, with him, of course, making the Stanley Cup final in 2010. They won the playoff series in his first 3 full NHL seasons, which the first of which was that Cup final run. But it sucks. I mean, Giroux was you get a player like Claude Giroux not very often. There are teams who would love to have every single team would kill to have a player follow the trajectory that Claude Giroux has. And when you get a player like that, the one thing you don't want to do is waste him. And looking back on it, it's pretty tough to say that the Philadelphia Flyers didn't do just that. I mean, like I said, Giroux was the captain of this team for 10 seasons. They won a playoff series once. And it is in large part due to the lack of a cup caliber supporting cast. Could Giroux have done better? Sure. You can definitely point to moments where Giroux could have done a little bit more, and his playoff performances the last couple of times he did make the playoffs in Philadelphia were not very great. However, I mean, looking at the grand scheme of things, Claude Giroux does not deserve very much of the blame at all. The brunt of the blame belongs to the Flyers management that was unable to surround him with the supporting cast necessary to make a legitimate Stanley Cup push.
How do we feel about him in Florida now? Because they're dangerous.
It's weird to look at, obviously. I mean, he'll always be a Flyer to myself and, just about every Flyers fan. I mean, obviously, he makes Florida look even more deadly than they already are. I mean, the Panthers are trying to be the first team since I think it's the 95, 96 Penguins to average 4 goals a game. They're a little bit over that right now. And you add Giroux and you add Max Domi, too, to the mix. I mean, your offense.
Max Domi went to Carolina.
I thought it was Florida.
No, Carolina.
It was a 3-team. I could have sworn it said Florida. Maybe I had that wrong.
I watched the Hurricanes game
Carolina.
last night.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought it was at first, but then I thought I must have misread the 3-team trade thing. I was wondering how Florida had the cap space.
Florida was in there. I think they.
Yeah, they got some prospect or whatever. I think I just read the 3-team trade wrong or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, you add Claude Giroux to the mix. I mean, Giroux has been one of the few things about the last 2 Flyer seasons have been so dismal. And Giroux has been the most consistent bright spot across those 2 seasons. You could argue that maybe Carter Hart was a bigger bright spot this season. But, obviously he was dismal last year.
I thought you were going to say Keith Yandel.
Oh, my God. The title of the Flyers game recap from last night that I haven't put out yet is literally going to be Sonk Cost. Like sunk cost with Sonk because Yandel.
Okay.
You can make a legitimate statistical case that he's been the worst defenseman in the NHL this season. And if
I was going to say they only play him to keep the streak alive, right?
Right now, you can make a legitimate case that Keith Yandel is the worst defenseman in the NHL by the eye test too.
But he only plays because it's a streak, right? Like
absolutely. And that's why he couldn't really be traded, because why would a team? He probably could have been traded for a 7th round pick or future considerations or whatever if he didn't have the streak. But it's not worth it for a team to take the PR locker room hit of being the one to break the streak just for the marginal upside of having a guy who was this season's equivalent of Eric Gustafson for the Flyers, but older, and I think he's worse. I'm pretty sure he's worse.
I knew you were going to have some kind of reaction when I said that.
It's just, I don't even know what to say.
I think Florida's really good. Like, there are just nice, like Mason Marchment.
I saw the Flyers and Panthers play in person over spring break because I was at my parents' condo and it's like an hour from the Panthers arena, and the timing worked out perfectly. So we went down, and I can confirm the Panthers are very good.
Very good.
Yes.
Apparently, he's going to be skating on the top line with Barkov. That should be
that
interesting.
Makes sense. And honestly, probably the most impressive thing about Giroux is how productive he's been this year, playing in not optimal circumstances. Like the Flyers lost their first line center, Sean Couturier, at the end of 2021. So he hasn't had him. He's had to play center a lot, where at this stage in his career, he's much better at left wing. The power play hasn't been that good because the players around him have not been – they just haven't been able to find a consistent formation or like a consistent, avenue of success the way they used to have it, where you could just have Giroux bomb one-timers from the circle or set up Wayne Simmons for tips and rebound goals in front. They don't have like any consistent way of scoring power play goals. So, I mean, you consider all those factors that aren't problems in Florida, and it's scary to think about how many points Giroux would have this season if he'd play the entire season in Sunrise.
One positive Flyers note that I just have to say, though, because we need some positivity. Cam Atkinson's pretty good.
He has been good. Cam Atkinson has been
good.
He's been very solid.
Just one positive.
I miss Jake Voracek, especially for his power play injuries, but I do like Cam.
There's an interesting stat on Voracek. He's got like 31 of 34 of his assists are like the third assist, not the primary assist.
Really? I thought he was like leading the league in primary assist or something like that.
Maybe it's the other way around.
It might be the other way around. I think he's having a year.
Yeah.
From what I've seen.
What do we think on Marc-Andre Fleury going to Minnesota? Because Cam Talbot's actually been really shaky.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota's goaltending, I mean, they've been under 900 save percentage since the calendar year turned over. Honestly, the bigger surprise for me is them trading Kaapo Kähkönen, who like a couple years ago was seen as their goalie of the future. He won the AHL Goalie of the Year award not too long ago. I mean, obviously, it's easier to move him than
and they didn't even protect him in the expansion draft.
They did not, and it was a mild surprise, I would say, that he wasn't taken in the expansion draft. I mean, Susie was a good player too. So it was kind of 50-50 between those two guys, and I guess Seattle just preferred the defenseman. But yeah, I would say, I mean, I was kind of caught off. I would say I was pretty caught off guard, but as well. But Minnesota, I mean, they have to go for it this year because the Parise and Suter buyout penalties basically double for the next couple seasons compared to what they are now. So they're going to have no cap space moving forward. This is an all-in year for Minnesota, more or less. And obviously adding Marc-Andre Fleury gives them the type of goaltender who you can, count on in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I know Fleury had some playoff troubles in the middle of his career, but those have mostly been left in the rearview mirror from his mid 2010 days, back when Claude Giroux and the Flyers were dunking on him in that epic first round series in 2012. But I mean, Fleury's a game changer for the Minnesota Wild, no doubt about it.
Kaprizov is awesome. He just takes over nights. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, he's great. I mean, the fact that he was able to turn Victor Rask into like a useful NHL center for like a couple months last season is impressive in itself. That tells you all you need to know right there. I mean,
Zuccarello is having the year of his life too.
Yeah, honestly, you know who we kind of owe an apology to? Paul Fenton. Remember, though, he was the GM of the Wild for 1 year, and he made. Granted, like there were reports that like the culture there was kind of toxic, so that in itself maybe would have justified his firing. But we mocked that Fiala trade, we mocked that Zuccarello signing, and they turned out to be pretty good decisions. I mean, those two guys are phenomenal players for the Wild. I mean, he certainly wasn't perfect because I mean he traded Niederreiter for Victor Rask, but he made some good moves. He wasn't the total tire fire that we kind of made him out to be, and that it looked like at first. He had some decent moves.
One team that's really bad that I love watching is the New Jersey Devils. I can't help myself. They just have so many good young guys that like.
I read this in the last Power Rankings article that we did. The Devils aren't a bad team. They're a mediocre team that can't get a save. They're bad this season, but you look at some like a lot of their underlying numbers, and they're in the like middle of the pack. Like they're a decent team. Like I don't think if they were getting like average goaltending that they would be a playoff team or anything like that, but they would be competitive. They would probably be like where the Columbus Blue Jackets are right now, which is certainly better when they are right now in the standings.
I watched them play Edmonton the other night.
I want to watch the Devils because I think they are an exciting team and they certainly have some pieces. They just got to find a goalie.
Their goaltending is horrific. I think there was a couple times I've watched him, and John Gillies, I mean, he lets in cupcakes.
Yeah, I mean, he's not an NHL caliber goaltender, which, I mean, I don't think New Jersey really thought he was because he wasn't even on the roster at the start of the year. Them losing Bernier for basically the whole season obviously really stings.
I think they're closer than people think, though. This Jesper Bratt, he's got my attention.
Bratt's a good player. They definitely do have some pieces there. I mean, they're kind of just waiting for the timeline to match up when their young guys take off and the older guys in Washington or Pittsburgh maybe fall off. We'll see if that's next year.
Pretty good too.
Who?
Nico Heischer. He's pretty good. He's not better than Cale Makar, but
oh no, he's definitely not. But I mean, he's a solid. I saw a tweet about him like this morning, I think it was. So he's got 44 points in 54 games this year, something like that. That's pretty solid. That's like low end first line caliber. You have 44 and 54.
Getting better.
That's very. I mean, you got him and Jack Hughes down the middle. You got guys like Bratt, Dawson Mercer, Alexander Holtz coming up on the wing, Ty Smith, Dougie Hamilton on the back end. The pieces are coming together slowly but surely for the Devils. They just got to like be able to start building some progress soon because these last couple of years for them have been absolutely brutal.
Who would be your Stanley Cup picks right now? You still going with the Avalanche?
That's a good question. I mean, it's hard against Colorado. I really like Calgary. I'm a little bit gun shy on them, perhaps unfairly, just because I remember that 2019 season all too well when they were so good and then collapsed in the first round against, ironically, Colorado. It's tough. Calgary's really good. I've been on their bandwagon all season because they've been playing really well all season. Like it's not that they have a
Gavin refuses to take them seriously. I keep yelling at him.
I don't know. Gavin might want to rethink that. Like, I mean, Colorado could certainly beat Calgary in a playoff series, but I mean, I look at their defense on paper and it shouldn't be as good as it is. But like at some point, you just got to admit that it's at least this season, it's clicking together. And you got to give props to Daryl Sutter, who's always been able to coach, who's always coached, great teams at 5-on-5. You look back at those Stanley Cup winning LA Kings teams, they were phenomenal at 5-on-5. That was their calling card. And this Calgary Flames team is one of the near that same caliber. I'm not saying they're going to win the Stanley Cup this year, but they are certainly in the
Their defense is better without Giordano.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it would probably be better if they could have gotten him back. I know it was reported that they actually looked into doing that, but they couldn't make it work with the cap because there are specific rules that are against retaining salary for someone you lost in the expansion draft. So that's why they weren't able to. I remember it was reported by a couple of people that they were looking at Giordano, but they couldn't make that work. But I mean, yeah, their defense. Who would have thought that a Nikita Zadorov, Eric Goodbranson pair would not only work but work incredibly well?
I kind of like their Oliver Shillington. He's pretty good offensively.
Yeah, Shillington's a guy who was a very hyped draft pick. If you remember, Trey, you remember when the Boston Bruins had those 3 first-round picks in a row in 2015? The infamous tweet is that the Bruins could get, I believe it was Barzal, Connor, and Shillington. Like that was the infamous tweet that those were the 3 guys that they should take with those 2 picks. And obviously it's taking Shillington a bit longer to develop than Barzal and Connor. And he's probably never going to be as good as those 2 guys, but he is kind of looked like he was on his last legs. He's honestly kind of a microcosm for the entire Calgary Flames team in general, because this was kind of a low-key last chance here for them with Johnny Gaudreau being a UFA and some of the other players, needing new contracts in the near future. And with their backs against the wall, they have absolutely flown to heights much greater than I was expecting them to this season.
Tyler Toffoli has been a pretty good addition so far, too.
He has been, and he gets to reunite with Daryl Sutter there, who was his coach in LA at the start of his career. That's been a great fit for them. And I really like the Cal Yarncroke addition as well. I thought they were going to get Andrew Kopp, and Cal Yarncroke was basically like the light version of Andrew Kopp. So I think that's another good ad for them. Their top 9 is incredibly deep.
My pick today would be Colorado and Florida. But
it's a good pick. The thing, honestly, with Florida is the thing with picking any team in the Atlantic is that division is just such an utter bloodbath. 4 of the top 9 teams in the NHL reside in the Atlantic. Does
anybody want to play the Bruins in the first round?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, honestly, the best bet for the Bruins or even the Maple Leafs or any of those teams, the Lightning even, they're not even the one team that's basically guaranteed to get a divisional spot is Florida. The best bet, honestly, for those teams might just be dropping the wild card spot and try to get through the Metro Gauntlet, which is a little bit less intimidating.
I agree.
But the Atlantic is just absolutely stacked.
I agree. That's kind of why I could lean Carolina. I think their path might be a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
I know the other NHL people in our Slack, they disagree with me on this, but I just don't think the Rangers are that good. I think they're
5-on-5. Yeah,
I think Shesterkin's carrying them.
I will say this though, their 5-on-5 numbers have been a bit better as of late. I remember writing that in the last power.
I mean, they get worse.
They were how they had gotten middle of the pack since January or whatever. I'm trying to pull those up right now.
They couldn't get worse. 5-on-5.
But here's the thing: all you need in the playoffs sometimes is a good goalie.
He's unbelievable so far.
Yeah, Shesterkin is more than good, obviously. But yeah.
Carolina played the Rangers on Sunday. I want to pull up that stat line. It was just watching that game. It was incredible. Gorgia, 44 save shutout. I just don't see that repeating come playoff team.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's not even going to play in the playoffs. And by the way, maybe the Rangers play underlying numbers were getting better since March 1st. Expected goals for percentage, worst in the NHL 5-on-5. Arizona, second worst. San Jose, third worst. Columbus, fourth worst. New York Rangers.
I believe that. Just watching them Sunday night, 44 shots against, 17 shots against, or 4. And then I
did like their trade deadline. I like their deadline moves. Tyler Mott's a good fourth liner. Justin Braun should slot in nicely on the right side behind Fox and Trouba. And Andrew Copp is a versatile guy who can second line left wing for them, but he could be third line center too if they want to stack their forward group. So I'll give them a little bit of a pass and see if those guys can inject a bit of a second wind to them. But yeah, the Rangers are going to have a really tough time putting all their chips in this.
I don't see them beating Carolina. I don't see them beating Pittsburgh.
Yeah, no. It's going to be a real uphill battle for them. And I mean, they're probably getting Pittsburgh in the first round. Actually, Pittsburgh's a bit closer to Carolina than I realized.
Pittsburgh's actually the sneakiest of sneaky teams somehow.
Yeah. I kind of expected them to be a little bit more aggressive at the deadline. And as a Flyers fan, I'm not disappointed that they weren't, but maybe as a neutral NHL fan somehow, I wish they'd found a way to get Chychrun, honestly. From a neutral perspective, obviously, as a Flyers fan, I would not like to see them win the Stanley Cup, but
I wanted the Panthers.
Talking about objectively trying to maximize the odds of getting another cup with Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. I wish from that perspective, they should have been more aggressive.
Are we sure they're going to keep Letang in the offseason?
No, we're not, which is all the more reason why they needed to trade for Chychrun. And also, trading for Chychrun would have made Letang probably more likely to resign because now he knows he's going to get to play with an elite partner. Potentially. Although maybe they would have kept Dumoulin and Letang together and put Chychrun on the second pair.
Yeah. What else do I want to go over? Gavin still thinks he's going to beat me in fantasy. Can we talk about that for 5 minutes?
We can try. I'm not really a fantasy hockey guy, but we can try.
I want to show you both of our teams, and I want you to see what you think.
What are the standings right now, though?
So on the year, I'm 20-1.
Damn.
And Gavin is 17-4.
Okay. Mr. 2018-19 Lightning over here.
I like to refer to myself as the 2007 Patriots that lost a game early instead of losing in the Super Bowl.
There you go.
Before I send you my rosters, let me think of another question I want to ask you. Edmonton. I think Edmonton might be okay, actually.
I think they're stabilizing. They've been much better since Giroux coming in. Yes. And honestly, the Brett Kulak trade might be a tad bit of an overpay, but it's not as big an overpay as a lot of people think. He's always put up very good numbers in Montreal. I honestly would like to see them maybe pair him with Tyson Barrie because he used to be really good when he was playing with Jeff Petrie. So getting someone who can move the puck like Barrie would be optimal. I don't know if that's necessarily practical with just the current mix of – and honestly, that probably is practical, honestly, because they could go Bouchard, Ceci on the right side, and then Nurse Keith, and then the third pair is Kulak Barrie.
Yeah, he's done a number of different things. Like the Tippett, he had Bouchard running the power play, like the first line power play. And that just didn't seem like the wise decision with the way that Tyson Barrie can move the puck around.
Yeah, if Tyson Barrie's not your first power play unit quarterback, what's the point of having Tyson?
He wasn't. And he wasn't.
Ask Toronto.
Yeah, and I think Evander Kane has been good. I know he's got his problems, but he's putting a lot of pucks in the net right now. So I sent you both my team and then Gavin's team.
All right, let's get a look at this. Are yours
Courtney,
the first two images?
Yeah, mine is the first.
Okay,
couple.
so you're the one with McDavid.
Yeah,
I should know it's you because you have a Vander Kane. Okay. So McDavid, Aho.
He's good though.
What?
He's good at
I'm not
hockey.
saying he isn't. I'm just saying I
Yeah.
know you like him. So you have McDavid, Aho, Point, Stamkos, Robertson, Teravainen, Jack Hughes, Kane, Line, who's been turning it on lately, Theodore, Pietrangelo, Nurse, D'Angelo. Now I really know it's your team. Barry and Eichel. You have Huberdeau as a scratch, or is that just because?
It's because they're not playing today. They're not playing today. Yeah.
Barry, Eichel, Haskin and Downey on IR is tough for you, especially because Downey's apparently done for the regular season.
I know.
Markstrom, Anderson, and net. That's pretty legit. All right, let's hear. McKinnon, Tavares, Zegras, Larkin, Raymond, Terry, Hintz, Duchesne, Caulfield, instant change. Makar, Snyder, Sergachev, David Savard. Huh.
Have a conversation with him about that one. I messaged him yesterday too.
Uyghur, Schmaltz, Toffoli, Byram, Ferraro. You're really going to ask me to pick James Reimer and Craig Anderson over Jacob Markstrom and Frederik Anderson. Yeah, I think you're.
Gavin said he's going to beat me.
I think you're in a good spot.
I think so too.
I'll give you like a 70% chance of victory.
Okay. All right. I'm excited for you to do fantasy next year.
Yeah, I'll dip my toe into that fantasy. I'm not gonna know how it works. I'm just gonna draft people like I think are good in real life.
That's part of the game, I think.
Yeah, but like obviously what makes a good fantasy player doesn't necessarily make a good real life player and vice versa.
That's why I said Travis Sanheim will be on your team and you'll wonder why you're not scoring.
Because he never plays the power play. I don't get it.
That's why I have D'Angelo picks up all the assists.
36-year-old Keith Yandel feel included.
Why is it Sanheim picking up assists? I can see it. It's going to be great.
Because they never play him on the power play. I've never seen anything like it. He's a puck-moving defenseman.
He's actually good, too.
Defenseman. He's a good one, and he is literally never in his 4 years in the NHL, other than like the 2 months Shane Gostisbehere was hurt towards the end of the 1920 regular season, had a consistent power play role.
He's actually good, too. Like, he is a good player.
He's actually very good. He is the reason why Rasmus Ristolainen has like career highs in Corsi for and expected goals this year.
This is a fun show today. Just admit my hockey brain has gotten better.
I can see how it's
my hockey brain's gotten better.
I can see how it's fun from your perspective.
Yeah.
How about your Boston? How do you feel about your Boston Bruins? That's the real question.
I feel better about them this year than I do in like 3 or 4 of the years past, actually. I think Swayman's good. I think Swayman's good. I think more so than anything, they have more than one line that can score. Like,
do they actually though?
Taylor Hall and Pasternak kind of have a thing going on that second line. It's been good.
Honestly, you guys kind of got put in a tough spot through no fault of your own because the second line center market completely dried up.
Yeah.
Because
Eric Hall was kind of brutal.
Hurdle was extended. Vancouver kept Miller. Giroux nixed a trade to Boston with his no move clause. Really, the only guy you could have gotten may have been Max Domi. That would have basically been it.
Having an upgrade over Eric Hall on that second line would have been fantastic.
Yeah. Obviously, that's my concern. Although Coyle's been decent for you guys this year.
Yeah, him and Craig Smith they're actually doing okay together.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the Bruins are the Bruins. It was just kind of weird for me to see them get the Lindholm move. Almost felt like a panic move to me.
I do too. And they traded the guy that looks like you too.
Been the best defensive team in the NHL this season. They have the fewest expected goals against at 5-on-5 and in all situations per 60 minutes. And so naturally, what you need to do when you're the best defensive team in hockey is trade a first and 2 seconds for a defenseman.
And Vakanainen.
Yep, and Vakanainen too. Who's maybe
he does look like you.
He
looks exactly. He looks exactly like you.
It's fair-ish. I give like a 5 out of 10.
Oh, I give it like a 7.5.
Maybe a 6 at most.
Is this the year that the Maple Leafs won a first-round series?
Oh my god, I hope so. Unless they're playing Florida. I need there not to be a Maple Leafs Panthers first-round series. I don't know if I can handle that. My second favorite team against my captain. Like what do you even do?
Wait, the Leafs are your second favorite team?
They've been my second favorite team for a while.
Really? How did I never know this?
I was absolutely devastated last year when they lost in the first round.
Wow. Why are they your second favorite team?
You know who Steve Dangle is?
No.
Oh my god. So Steve Dangle is this YouTuber who I think he's on his 15th season. He does this YouTube series called Leafs Fan Reaction. He is literally the reason why my articles are titled Flyers Fan Reaction.
Okay.
He makes a video after every single Maple Leafs game. He's done it since like the 07-08 season. And I just feel for the guy so much. I just want him to be happy. I feel so bad for him, especially since I finally got to see the Flyers win a playoff series a couple of years ago, which was something I had looked forward to for a long, long time. And when they finally beat the Canadiens in the bubble, I felt the weight come off my shoulders. And I would very much like for that same feeling to happen for Steve, who just seems like the nicest guy, who just happens to cheer for the most torturous hockey team in the world.
I noticed you didn't say anything about feeling bad for Scott.
I did not. I mean, I would say I feel bad for Scott, but I just don't know him as I feel like I know Steve. No offense, Scott, if you're listening. I feel bad for you too. I just don't get to like see Scott's like I don't watch 30 minutes of Scott like being utterly depressed in front of a camera after the Maple Leafs lose every single win or go home game ever.
Yeah.
So hopefully they can end that streak this year. But I mean, geez, goaltending with them. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, Jack Campbell's hurt. What are they going to do?
Peter Mrazek looks like the Peter Mrazek I know from his
he looks bad.
few months in Philly. He's a non-option. And as Steve says in his
started today, actually.
I know, but as Steve says in his videos, he does not know where the posts are. Like he's covering space that isn't like if the guy shoots it there, it's gonna go wide. Why are you covering it?
Oh man,
this Shalgren kid has looked good in very limited action, and Campbell should be back before the playoffs, but it's a rib injury, so those can linger. So who knows how close to 100% he will be. But yeah, I hope so, man. I really hope so. Especially to see Wayne Simmons win a playoff series again. I love Simmer.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, and to see he was one of the guys who had like a video tribute, was part of the video tribute for Giroux's 1000th game last week, which feels like it was years ago. I can't believe it hasn't even been a week since Giroux's last game. Yeah, I mean Simmers always will hold a special place in my heart. He actually used to live in my hometown. He would walk. I
traded for him in my PS5 series.
He would walk his dogs past our baseball practices.
Wow.
I remember one time he walked by. It was either right after the Flyers had clinched a playoff spot or they'd been eliminated from the playoffs. I remember we all saw him and like clapped and he like waved to us. And I was at his last game, the Stadium Series game, that outdoor comeback against Pittsburgh. So, I mean, Simmer has always been a fan favorite in Philly, and he was one of the few guys in the Giroux era who definitely held up his share of the bargain and then some. So, I'm rooting for him big time.
Give me a couple maybe predictions you feel strongly about for the rest of the year.
That's a good. Honestly, I'll try to make some. But
yeah, we'll wrap up with this.
I don't feel amazing about any of my predictions this year. I just don't feel like the playoff picture is so muddled this year. I will say I don't think Washington is going to go anywhere in the playoffs this year, although they are 7-2-1 on their last 10 games, so who knows? But they've just been very mediocre since getting off to a really hot start.
What do you think about Vanacek?
Like, he's fine. He's not terrible, but he's fine. and fine doesn't necessarily work really in the playoffs. Assuming they get Drew Downey back, I think LA can maybe play like a spoiler role in the playoffs.
Really?
They've been really good at 5-on-5 all year. Obviously, they've got guys like Downey, Kopitar, Dustin Brown who have plenty of playoff experience. So it kind of the Kings are kind of in a spot where the Flyers were a couple years ago, where they're trying to mix the new guard in with the old guard. And for their sake, I hope they get the timing right, even though obviously it's a little easier to stomach it if you don't, if you have 2 Stanley Cups in the last decade. So I feel good about them. I also feel good about Edmonton, though, but it's kind of hard to feel good about both those teams since they're probably going to meet in the first round. At least there's a pretty good chance of that being the case. And, yeah, that's kind of all I got, really, to be honest. I really don't have that good of a feel for the playoff picture this year, really across the board. Like, I'm going to be trying to do the playoff series preview articles like I did all last year for the most part. It's going to be tough in the first round because that's like right as my finals are taking place. So we'll see how many of those I get out. But I have no idea who I'm picking in just about any of the series so far this year. So.
Give me something on Nashville, actually. I'm actually starting to buy into them more and more, even though I shouldn't.
I'm surprised. I don't know where they go with Philip Forsberg from here.
Like Roman Josi is doing unbelievable
He's been
things.
Insane lately.
Yeah.
He's trying to steal the Norris from Cale Makar. And he just might do it.
And it's like a legit conversation. It's not like yeah. And they get great goaltending. Matt Duchene actually looks good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. They might be okay.
They got a shot.
Yeah.
They definitely got a shot. I would say the one thing with them is they could use a little more scoring punch in their middle six, but no one's perfect, I guess.
I'm not counting out Tampa.
You absolutely shouldn't. Why would you? Yeah, I'm not counting out Tampa. In other news, the sky is blue.
I think Carolina is unbelievable. They're like a top 5 team to me. Easy. No question.
Yeah, I mean, they're being great all season, but one of these top teams I feel like is going to lose early. So, like, I agree with you that, like, I feel good about them, but, like, someone's going to crack. And if they get Boston or Toronto in the first round, that could be tough. Like,
I think St. Louis will lose.
They would probably benefit from playing. Like, if I was Carolina, I'd rather play the Rangers or the Penguins in the first round.
Oh,
with respect to either of those two teams, who are both very good. But
Washington. Can they play Washington? That would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, they could. Yeah. I mean, they're tied right now with Florida for first in the East. Yeah, Washington's only 3 points behind Boston for the first wild card, though. Although Boston has 2 games in hand, so it's so tough. We've known the playoff teams in the East for a while now. Obviously, I'd say we can feel good about 7 of the playoff teams in the West. Everyone from Nashville up is in a really good spot, with the exception of maybe Edmonton. But that last wild card spot in the West is probably a 4-team race, I'd say, right now, with Dallas, Vegas, Winnipeg, and Vancouver's hanging on for dear life.
I just want to see Gavin panic a little bit if Vegas gets that last spot.
Imagine Colorado, Vegas in the first round.
Oh, that would be so funny with a fully healthy Vegas.
Absolutely incredible.
It'd have to be healthy.
And then Vegas is at full strength. They've got Stone, they've got Pacioretty, Leonard, Martinez, the whole gang.
Oh man, that would be awesome.
That might be enough to finally get the NHL to change on like the cap rules with LTIR and that sort of stuff.
Well, if the Dodonov trade doesn't do it, I don't know what will.
Well, the Dodonov trade more had to do with like the no move clause, but like obviously the implication behind it was. But yeah, we'll see.
All right, Andrew. Anything else to add?
I think I'm good.
Okay. That was Andrew McGuinness. Make sure to follow him. I forget what his Twitter is.
It is @_Andrew McGee, I believe.
We'll have Sophie add that in the video. He does the Flyers recaps every night that they play.
Yes.
Make sure to read those every night.
If you are a baseball fan, last year I did weekly to bi-weekly articles on the Phillies. And if there's one thing the Phillies are going to be this year, it's going to be entertaining. Will they be good? Will they be bad? Probably both. But yeah, it should
They can hit a lot better than they could last year, though.
They will hit all of the home runs and make all of the errors. So their season starts in like 2 weeks, or I think 2 weeks from tomorrow, I want to say, which is absolutely
They're going
crazy.
to be bad defensively.
Yes, but last year they bet that their hitting would outweigh their flaws on pitching and defense. It obviously didn't work out, but it was close. And so instead of trying to fill the holes in pitching and defense, they decided to strengthen the hitting and hope that the additions of Schwarber and Castellanos and bounce backs from Didi Gregorius and Alec Boehm are going to be able to out-hit those flaws. So Phillies articles should start coming out. I'll probably have like an opening day roster preview like I usually do. The whole 3 sentences or less thing that I always love doing right before the season starts. And then that first Sunday, so 2 Sundays from this coming Sunday, should be the first article of the second season of the 7th-day stretch, which is what I called the Philly series last year, which I had a lot of fun writing.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Sounds good. Make sure to keep up with what Andrew's doing on the site. Didn't talk to Courtney much, but she's down there running the whole show. Make sure to follow her, Plumber Courtney, myself, Trey Dalbert. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube, and we'll see you next time.